What up, meatheads? This is Travis, American Butcher. And this is our Thanksgiving bonus episode. And the reason I'm doing this is because a lot of people are traveling around this time. And I think it may be beneficial if you're stuck in an airport trying to get home, or if you're stuck in traffic trying to get across town to go out and see your family. And I had this interview lined up with Samantha, as well as some outtakes from a recording with David and Ryan and myself. So please enjoy, please travel safe, and please share this with your friends and family. Who knows? They may enjoy the meat block as well.
It's okay to be vulgar on this, right?
Yeah, you could say shit, cunt, fuck, burn the flag, whatever. I don't care.
Okay, cool.
Good cutting enhances the quality of good meat. In his way, the meat cutter is an artist. Poor cutting results in an inferior piece of meat, regardless of quality.
Samantha, what's your full name?
My full name, like my government name, it's Samantha Jardanowski.
Okay.
But I just go by Sam. Usually Jardanowski throws people off.
Okay. And have you always wanted to be in the industry, in the meat industry?
No, actually. I got a part-time job at a meat counter in Wisconsin and then just took to it. It was kind of like something to do to pay rent, and then just turned into a passion.
Okay.
But not the plan at all.
Yeah. What part of Wisconsin was that in?
Well, I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but it was out in Franklin, which is like a suburb of Milwaukee.
I've been to Milwaukee, I believe, once.
For what?
I used to be in bands and tour around when I was younger.
Where'd you play?
I couldn't even tell you. It was probably maybe the basement of somebody's house.
That sounds like Milwaukee.
Yeah, it was. I used to be in the hardcore music scene, I guess. But it was very nice. Otherwise, what I know about Milwaukee is the Violent Femmes and Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah.
And then there's those girls who did the Slender Man thing. Milwaukee's a very Wisconsin's strange, but Milwaukee's really strange.
Yeah.
Just a whole bag of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's cool though. It's where I'm from.
Mm-hmm. But now you're in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, Bed-Stuy.
Yeah. How did you end up there from Milwaukee?
What happened was I always kind of wanted to leave Milwaukee, like, how everybody wants to leave their hometown. And I got into a relationship, and my girlfriend got into grad school out in Long Island. So she was moving out here to Brooklyn. So I just, followed suit. So
once you were cutting back in Milwaukee, and then what steps did you do to stay in the industry at that point?
Well, luckily, I work for Whole Foods. So, and I know you got a lot of people on your show who have worked for Whole Foods or, still possibly do. But it's really easy to move around, Yeah. So I kind of just took advantage of that. Mm-hmm. And they were opening up a new store where they had like a whole, they had hanging carcasses. And back in Milwaukee, it was only boxed meat.
Yeah.
So that was like a really big driving factor for me coming out here too. It's like, New York City is a really big place for butchery.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of big opportunities out here. So when I saw Whole Foods with, half hanging hog carcasses and whole lambs and, rib exports, I thought that was cool at the time.
Yeah.
I just did what I had to do to get out here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I've certainly encouraged anyone, like I've gotten jobs without figuring out logistics and then just make it work.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes it doesn't work, but fuck it, you tried,
Yeah. What is it? Like Michael Jordan said, you miss 100% of the baskets you don't take. So, yeah.
Very much true. Very much true. And it ended up working out really well. I actually worked at Fleischer's for a while under this guy, Jason Yang, and I learned whole animal butchery in like a month.
That's awesome.
It was just so fast. Like, you know what I mean? Like things like that is, stuff you learn out here pretty quick.
Yeah, I like to think I'm good friends with Brian.
actually just messaging him the other day for some advice. Brian's a cool dude, very groovy guy.
Yeah, very cynical. I love it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Kind of ridiculous, but like in a good way. But when I first met him, he would make me so nervous when I'd be cutting. I'm like, please don't come over here. Because I'm like kind of learning right now, but he's a really good teacher.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I introduced the idea of him back and forth about possibly being on the show, and we call it the Brian R&R segment, which would just stand for the Rage Report, and he would just bitch about stuff. You should
have a 5 like little segment just of him like fucking ranting and raving.
Yeah, because Brian, I love you, but most of our correspondence is you complaining, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Then, so the meat industry isn't something that you more or less sought out. What were you like when you were growing up in Wisconsin?
Me as a person?
Yeah, what was little Samantha like?
I was a bad kid.
Yeah,
definitely. I was like definitely when I was younger, I was like a tomboy, you know, and then I just had my little phases, but I wasn't like a bad kid, you know. It was just one of those kids who was just like, I'm not in, I'm not out. I was just kind of in between. No real sense of direction, but I loved music. Like you said, the hardcore scene. Like I loved metal. I love R&B. I was kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I came up into finding, you know, because I didn't go to college or anything, but when I found butchery, it kind of like centered me.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of this like, you know, there's no, you go into the cut room and it's just you cutting. You know what I mean? You know, so that was very reassuring for me, definitely, because growing up, I was just kind of like all over the place, kind of like a little outcast. I was cool though.
Yeah.
But definitely an outcast.
Yeah, the one, you know, I didn't go to college either. And because of that, I, you know, am not in debt. So, and then, yeah, I love cutting in the sense that at the end of the day, when you get to step back and see a physical, like you could see your work manifest in physical form. Where
definitely.
It's not a stack of papers. It's like, look at this casework I did, or look at, there was carcasses here, now there's not, type thing.
Yeah, you definitely see it form. And also another thing too that I really appreciate, especially me being like a woman in the industry, is just like, you know, you walk the case and you have no idea who did that. You know, you have no idea. It's just like, I come out from around the case. Like, I get so many little old ladies who are like, oh, you work back here? I'm like, yep, I did all this. And they look like they're so surprised, but like pleasantly surprised, you know? So that's kind of like another thing too I really like about being a butcher too.
Yeah. And then what have you noticed, and I don't know how to tactfully do this, is being a woman in this industry that is in all senses not, I don't know, dominated, but is that there's more men than women, essentially. There's like a lot, and I've worked with tons of machismo bullshit, and where it's, I like to call it like guy flirting and grab ass, where it's like weird and stuff like that. I just want to know that I've never seen it from anyone else's eyes other than my own. So I want to know what you see, especially from a woman's perspective in that sense. If people tone it down or they ramp it up, or is it, do you feel comfortable? Like, I don't know what I'm.
Yeah, I know what you're trying to say. So when I first started, all the butchers were really old conservative men. So when I first started, you know, I was like, hey guys, I think I want to cut. You know what I mean? They weren't against the idea, but I could tell for them being so old and from the older generations, it was kind of weird because typically the girls would do the prep case or wrap the chicken and they cut all the meat. But nowadays, like, you know, that was like, you know, a one-time experience. I've always learned how to hang out with the guys because I've always been kind of like a rough person. So you learn how to adapt, you know. I've never been in a situation in a meat room where I felt like I was being like violated or anything like that. But I'm also 6 feet tall big as hell, like girl, you know what I mean? But all the guys I've ever worked with have been extremely, polite to me, but also, I don't expect to go into a cold, windowless room with a bunch of men and expect it to be like church. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know there's going to be some like vulgar stuff, but I can hang. But that's also because I'm always like one of the maybe two other women, so there's not really any opportunities for anything crazy to go down. But all the men I've ever worked with have been extremely respectful. I mean, now that I'm like, I run a meat department now with another guy, definitely I'll walk into the cut room, there'll be conversations and they pipe down, but that's because I'm their boss now. But, if I were a butcher, they just totally keep it going and I might, add in a bit. But I've never been in a situation where I felt uncomfortable. And if I do, I always speak up, definitely. And they've always been respectful of my opinions as a woman, because they don't really get to hear it too often. Because like you said, you're just surrounded by a bunch of dudes. So everybody's kind of just like agreeing with each other all the time.
And then it turns into like a perpetual machine where I've noticed where it's like somebody will tell some crazy story and someone will tell some other crazy story. And the next thing
it gets crazier and crazier. It's like no end in sight. And it's like, all right, guys, it's getting weird in the bad way. You know what I mean?
I've entertained the idea of doing an episode of some of the craziest shit I've ever heard. But
I could totally join in on that too. Even some of the girls I've worked with. When I worked in Milwaukee, like there was me and two other girls, and there was one girl who was she was a pervert. And she was like the perviest person in the department. And she was like this pretty little lady, like 25 years old. And just all the guys would like, I felt like she made some of the guys uncomfortable. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know if it's something about being in the environment where certain people get a little too comfortable, but I think she was the perviest person I ever worked with. Not saying that everybody's pervy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, well, maybe it was that she was just a woman with outgoing sexuality. And that, again, makes people uncomfortable.
Definitely. But like, it was first it started that she was just an outgoing sexual person, but then she just got so comfortable that, like you were saying, somebody tells a crazier story and she just kept getting crazier. You know what I mean? And she was the last person you'd expect in the department to say some of the craziest shit you've ever heard. Very entertaining. But there were some days where it's like, dude, 6 a.m., don't want to hear that shit right now. She's very sweet though. She meant no harm.
It's weird because aside of this podcast, when I'm actually at work, because I manage people, they don't know about this podcast and they won't, because I don't want them to know this side of me. At work, I'm more just like task oriented, goal oriented. I don't want them to know that I think dick jokes are funny and all this, and inviting people into at what point, even though it's weird because I tell this podcast will bring out weird personal stories about myself. And I'm completely okay with strangers and people I've never met knowing those things about me. But I don't really want like my rappers to know that.
I mean, I totally understand that. But I've always been the kind of way like, look, if it's out there, it's out there. You know what I mean? Because then you can never be surprised.
Yeah.
But it's too late. You haven't told them, so you can't tell them now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they know about it, but they'll be like, what's the name of it? And I'll be like, hey, let's do something else.
I couldn't work. I'd have to get it out of you. I'm like, what the hell is this? Because you could be talking shit about me on this podcast. You know what I mean? It's probably why they want to hear it.
Yeah. No, like, it's funny because it's like somebody who works at a plant I used to work at reached out to me and said, oh, and like someone I've never met before. And he's like, oh, I listened to the podcast. Do you know this person? Do you know this person? Do you know this person? I'm like, man. I don't know if I ever said their name, but I've certainly talked poorly about them.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I could throw so many stones that I'll just be standing around glass, I guess.
Whatever.
Yeah. What advice would you give someone who wants to be a butcher or who wants to be in this industry? Because that's a common question I get, is people just saying they want to cut. And I don't know if there's a right way or wrong way or right path or a wrong path. Some people come in it reverse from culinary side. Some people come in it from slaughter side, like myself. Well, what would you suggest to a beginner? Or
my advice, because you're coming up from it from one side, and then there's that, the culinary side. I came at it from no side. Like before I started butchering, I ate chicken nuggets. Like I didn't cook for myself. Now I cook for myself. But I definitely ask them why and then go from there. I would definitely advise them and like let them know like it's hard work. You're gonna have to prove yourself. You don't necessarily have to be thick skinned, you know what I mean? I'm totally okay with people being, sensitive and things like that. But you do have to have some kind of you have to come in with some kind of backbone. And you have to be ready to prove yourself, because when you walk into, a cut room with a bunch of experienced butchers, I remember my first day at this job I have now, I walked in and saw these men who have been doing this for years. And I'm like, super young, and I'm, their boss now. And I was like, I have to prove myself to these guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because at the end of the day, like nothing shows except for your work. So I would definitely, advise them to get ready to learn a lot and to learn a lot about themselves, because butchering is a beautiful thing. But if you're not ready to really work and, get to know people and get to know, respect animals, and you're not cut out for it. I've met a lot of people who just come in and say they want it for the money, or they want it for just because it's a cool thing to do now. And, the second it gets super busy around Thanksgiving or something like that, they're crying. Like, it's like, this is what's going to happen. You can't just come in because it's cool. This is a thing you have to dedicate yourself to day and night. You can't half-ass it pretty much. If you're going to half-ass it, stay home.
And especially working the retail side of that, working direct with the customer.
Oh, yeah.
I myself, I could turn it on, but I don't like the general public. So so when I worked retail, and I was one of those people like, whoa, this Thanksgiving to Christmas, I was like, this sucks for me, not anyone else. And so I decided I'm going to go back into processing where I'm comfortable, but yeah, dealing with customers and customer service is an art.
Whole nother ballpark. But even for you with processing, like when it starts I'm assuming it speeds up sometimes. Like, you guys have deadlines to get and all that stuff like that. Even that, if you're not cut out to keep up with the pace, or, even the coal. I remember when I was working at Fleischer's, my first week, I woke up, my hands were asleep. I couldn't even turn my alarm off in the morning. My girlfriend was like, turn it off. I was like, I can't move my hands. Because it's hard work. And they're like, oh, you'll get used to it. I was like, no, I won't. You know what I mean? But I did. But even on the processing side, it's just like, you got to get ready for it. Like, you know what I mean? And you have to depend on your team a lot of the time too. But I totally understand, like, not liking the general public. I'm really good at this sounds fucked up, but being two-faced. Like I could totally switch it on and off, but it's kind of what you just have to do sometimes.
And I got good at that. And I actually love that I worked retail on the sole purpose that I met my wife there. And so that is a great thing out of it. That aside, I don't know. I don't think I would go back unless I were to open a retail spot.
You know what? I will say I had a customer a couple weeks ago, and he had been a vegetarian for like 15 years, and I sold him his first piece of meat in 15 years. And he was super cool. And like, it's stuff like that. Like, yeah, customer service could be a headache sometimes, but it's like out of the 20 customers, you get one who you like really connect with and really likes meat, and things like that, or really wants to know and isn't just buying a piece of meat to cook some recipe they saw in the New York Times. Stuff like that is fun because they kind of like, not to be like, they remember you and they come back, but they do. And then you kind of got like a little homie, like for the rest of the time you're, stuck at wherever you're working.
And I certainly had those great customers, but with human nature, it's our brains. I think my brain thinks of the 1 out of 50 shitty incidences versus, remembering the rest that are amazing.
And that's probably why we have processing and retail. So we can all be divvied up. Because definitely, yeah, I know what you mean. I used to be like that, but then I couldn't anymore because it was driving me crazy, And I turn red when I get frustrated, so customers would know right away when I was frustrated, and that didn't end up well for me in the long run. So I was like, control yourself, Stan. Get it together. You can do this.
People are people. You were or are a part of the Butcher's Manifesto. What's
hell yeah?
So what is that all about? And you went to Copenhagen, didn't you?
Yeah, and I'm part of Grrls Beat Camp too, if you heard of it. But Butcher's Manifesto is awesome. Pretty much, it's like this band of butchers, and they get together once a year in Copenhagen, and it's like Boy Scouts for butchers, but Boy and Girl Scouts now. But where we all get together and network with butchers, farmers, chefs, people from the customer side of things, and just discuss meat and meat life and all things like that. I'm probably butchering this. There was a lot of stuff we touched ground with, but I got to meet so many cool people and ate so much good food. Like I met people from Norway, Sweden, all over from Europe. There was one woman there who lived in Copenhagen, but she had a sausage shop in China. She was super cool. And also we were really drunk the entire time. Copenhagen's really cool. I'm definitely going next year. But it's kind of like what we're trying to do over there is create a network of people so that we can, throughout the year, have people you can talk to for advice and things like that. Like say I want to make a good blood sausage. I'll have somebody to call now, things like that. It was super cool though. Definitely highly suggested to anyone, even you. Shit, you should go. It was super fun.
I really wanted to go to Ireland this year.
For what?
The World Butcher Challenge.
Oh, I saw that. I was in New Zealand.
No, that's where the CEO who's putting it on, he's from New Zealand. And then
okay, I got it.
But each year, every other year, I don't know how often it is, it's in a different country.
Yeah.
But even that, I don't know. When I have harsh winters, it kind of takes up my vacation. So,
yeah.
Because I got snowed in for a few weeks last year. So, I'm not. Yeah.
It's like The Shining.
Yeah. I do live in literally the woods. But
oh, God, I couldn't do it. I freak out whenever I see open pastures. It's like the opposite of claustrophobia.
Yeah.
I think like open spaces freak me out.
Yeah, like my backyard is the woods, and like
nope.
And like if my wife and kids were like to like spend the night at like somewhere else, or if I'm alone by myself, I get like all freaked out when I look back there.
Yeah. I can't do it. It's like that's why the Blair Witch always freaks me out. It's like that's how I feel when I'm out. I feel like the Blair Witch whenever I'm in the woods. I can't do it. I'm trying though, because I want to learn more about like animal husbandry and farms, farm life, and all that. So I'm like, I got to get used to open space. I got to get out the cities.
Would you describe the journey you took to running your own meat department from the beginning? Do you think it was difficult, or was it? Would you think it would be difficult for some people, or?
It was so hard. I'm gonna be honest with you. Back to me being a woman. I honestly hate the fact that me having it really pisses me off the fact that I have a vagina. Seriously hinders me so much sometimes, because I know I can work hard. I know I can do this, whatever. But when I moved to New York, long story short, I was trying to do what I'm doing now. And there was somebody who was above me who was hell-bent on making every step I took impossible. And I don't know what it was, never did anything to the guy. But every time I bring it up, like, hey, I'm interested in, going here and doing this, and, running my own show with someone else possibly. I remember one time we were in the meat cooler and I was like, hey, I really, would love to be in a leadership position here one day. And he was like, that would never happen. Just straight up to my face. So moving here really was like, I don't know if it's New York City and how people are, or if it's because I'm a girl, but it was hard. And, sometimes, being where I'm at now, I'm kind of hesitant on bringing it up because, I have to see this guy all the time. You never escape these people in the environment that I'm in. But it was tough. But I learned how to play the ropes. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, if he's not going to bend this way, somebody else will. You know what I mean? But it was pretty tough. But now I'm in a really good position with a really good team and a really good partner running the team now. But it wasn't easy.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was fine, but it was just one of those things. Like everything can't come easy. You know what I mean? I had my boss tell me that the other day. He was like, sometimes you have to take losses because otherwise you're lying to yourself. You know what I mean? So when I was going through that, I was like, you know what? That's okay. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to get it anyways. You know, if I really deserve it, if I'm really capable of doing this, and in the end I did, because in the end, my work showed. And it's like when you're a butcher and you know what you're doing, eventually it should happen. You know.
Has his attitude changed, or is it just that you shifted towards not communicating with him directly?
I left and came back and completely separated myself from him. And now we're just on a completely professional level. Like I have no issues anymore, like at all. And I don't think he does either, but that's kind of just like, kind of like how it is in work environments sometimes, as, not even as a woman, just as a person, sometimes you have to brush things off. You know what I mean?
There's a shop out here. Some of their employees reached out to me about just like, what is a fair wage for someone with such and such experience, and what would you pay someone now? Then they said, now, would you pay that if they're a woman? And the bottom line is, if they're doing the job, then that's what they're worth. It is. And I guess there's a shop out here that there's been some women who have been there for 18 years and men that have been there for like 2 years that are being offered more opportunities. And I just, and it was actually the men of the shop who brought it to my attention, realizing that it was shitty, but it's just like bullshit conservative attitude that the owner has. And
I don't understand it. You know what I mean? So odd.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen a lot. And I've also seen that happen where a woman was in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's people just trying to get the bang for their buck, you know what I mean? Or whatever. But, eventually if you want to have, a team behind you, it's all going to come full circle.
Yeah.
Eventually it's going to come out. But yeah, I've never understood that. But I remember when I was making $8 an hour on a meat team, I was like, hell no.
Yeah.
Because, sometimes I just need that, experienced butcher to tell me how much he gets paid. And I was like, that's how much you get paid? Okay, sweet. I'm going to do this. Not because of the money, but because I know what I can do now.
Yeah.
Because, sometimes, I understand everyone wanting to keep things a secret, but a lot of times they're just doing that because somebody's getting fucked.
And I know with this example that I was bringing up, that they were being told that they couldn't take certain times off. And one thing I've learned, regardless if you're a man or a woman, owners should recognize who has control of their business, because it's not the owners, it's the workers. And if they want to, if someone puts in 2 weeks to go on vacation or 3 weeks or whatever, and the company is like pressuring them, like, you can't go because we need you, blah, 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 blah. It's on them to figure it out, not the fucking employee.
Right. Also, it's like, no, you don't. Like, usually you don't. You know what I mean? Like, unless it's like, during a holiday or something like that, I call bullshit. I used to work with this guy. He used to take 1 week of vacation in the middle of the summer for like the whole 20 years he'd been working there. And we got this new boss in, and he told him he couldn't. I saw a grown man cry because he wouldn't give him this one stupid week in the middle of the summer. He was pissed. And he doesn't work there anymore now. You know what I mean? It's just like, just give the dude his 1 week. He's been working here 20 years. He's great. But you want to come in and try and be, boss hog and stuff. Sometimes you just kind of got to look the other way and just let things happen to keep your employees happy. And, giving somebody 1 week of vacation when they need it isn't asking that much.
I more or less just, if I was that man, I'd be like, well, thanks for your opinion, but this is happening. So hopefully I have a job when I come back. What effects social media has had on butchery, which is something that is so hands-on and so But I guess social media is now making it an aesthetic in product, I guess.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm guilty of it.
Yeah.
As are we all. But I feel like social media for me, when I was a young apprentice, finding that there are all these butchers on Instagram was like coming out the closet almost for all of us butchers. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, we're here and we cut. Like, I think it's an awesome networking tool to get to know people. Definitely. I feel like I met so many friends, through social media, but the Butcher's Manifesto thing and the Grrls Meat Camp and all that stuff is because of social media. You know what I mean? So it's pretty much us starting our own web of connections. But I've definitely worked in environments where people were kind of obsessed with it. You know what I mean? Like, every time you cut something, you got to pull your phone out, take a picture, or it's like, ooh, take a picture of me doing this and stuff like that. Some people get a little vain, but I don't have 60,000 followers like some people do. And I don't know how the hell that happens. You know what I mean? It's almost like, that Salt Bae guy.
Uh-huh.
Like that. That's like the pinnacle of like me, no offense, but like, he's like a douchebag. He's cool though. But that's what happens when it's just like so much. I was watching his story the other day. I was like, he literally has somebody following him around, sprinkling salt on steaks all day. Like, it's pretty cool, but he's like very like narcissistic,
Well, yeah. So like Salt Bae or Nurse or I know that he started cutting and working in a shop when he was 14 years old. And so I appreciate that side of him, that like,
definitely, that
he paid his dues, I guess, in that sense. I also like to believe he is playing a caricature,
Yeah, but it's still funny,
know. Because I don't think he takes himself seriously.
I don't know that. See, that's the thing. He probably didn't until he got like kind of famous, and now he might be serious. That's the thing about social media. You never know if you don't really know what the character is. Like, I've met people who have been following online for so long and they were like super lame, you know what I mean? But it's just like, I follow you so closely and I meet you and you're not lame, but kind of just like not what you'd expect from somebody who seems so out loud on social media. I think that's the scary thing about social media is you create like different personalities. So you have like split personality butchers.
Yeah. It's fun. But you mentioned Grrls Meat Camp. What is that?
So Grrls Meat Camp was founded by this woman named Kate Hill, who's super cool, lives out in France. She's like a charcuterie queen. And her and a bunch of other women thought it'd be a good idea to create a network for women who are butchers, farmers, chefs, kind of the same thing for Butcher's Manifesto, but centered around women. And so I used to post a lot of meat on social media, and they found me and invited me out to they have these rendezvous, and it was in Calvert, Texas. And so I went with like 50 other women down there, and it was just like a meat camp out. It was super cool. But that's how I found out about Butcher's Manifesto, was through that, because 2 years ago, Kate had went to the Butcher's Manifesto, the first one, and she was one of like 3 women there. And there were all these other guys. And so she recruited some of us girls from the meat camp. And this year there were well over like at least a good 10, 15 of us. But yeah, it's just pretty much the same thing Butcher Manifesto is, but for women. And it's so much different, like cutting with a bunch of women than cutting with a bunch of guys. Not like in a bad way or anything, but it's just very like Snow White kind of feeling when you're on like a ranch in Texas with like 50 ladies breaking down a deer, making breakfast.
And is something that you would recommend for other women in the industry to? Oh
yeah, definitely. It doesn't hurt. And like, we're like, I say we, but like, we're always recruiting. And it's like, I honestly met so many people down there who I consider to be really good friends now. It's kind of like a little sisterhood of the traveling meat pants or whatever. I know it sounds weird, but that's what it is,
Awesome. How are the holidays so far for you? Because right now we just scratched the surface of the holidays. Do you have turkeys already stacked up, or are your orders crazy?
Don't even get me started. I was literally like crying at work today. So the meat team I work in is one of the busiest meat teams in our region. We do like between $165 to $200,000 throughout the year in a week. We got a whole semi truck of turkeys, and we're about to get a whole nother semi truck. So it's been crazy. And this is only like week one, and it is even, people are already buying stuff. It's been hectic, you know, because I like to keep my department nice and neat. And it's been crazy lately. It's just so many turkeys. I dream about turkeys.
With so much product coming in, do you guys have on-site storage, or the truck staying, or do you just have?
They just stay. There's no way. So what we do is we keep the trucks back there, and then we replenish our coolers. We have like 3 coolers, 3 walk-in coolers, and a freezer that we share. But we just replenish this one cooler over and over again. So it's basically like somebody's got to be on the turkeys. At least 2 or 3 people have to be on the turkeys at all time. This is my first time working at a place this busy. I've worked at places where we've had, you know, trucks before, but I'm really excited to see what next weekend's going to be like, because I know I'm going to get buff lifting all those turkeys in those trucks.
And then being that Thanksgiving is, you know, the pinnacle of our industry, retail. Do you have a retail horror story you want to share? And it's unprompted, and you could decline.
For Thanksgiving, I don't have any horror stories, but I've definitely seen some corners cut because it's just what you would have to do. I remember one time, this is screwed up. I don't condone this, and I was not okay with it. This was a long time ago, not where the place that I worked at now. But long story short, customer wanted a brine turkey. We had this big barrel of brine sitting there. They wanted it now. What's the guy do? Dunk it in the thing, pull it back out. And it was like, here's your brine turkey. I was like, you fucking asshole. I was like, that's not a brine turkey, you know what I mean? But he was just like, whatever, just give it to him. It's salty. And it's just like, you know, but if retail horror stories, not really. My horror for the Thanksgiving is always the week after, breaking down all the turkeys that you're not using, how disgusting and slippery. I hate turkeys. I don't like the way they taste. I don't like the way they look. And just the nightmare of just breaking down hundreds and hundreds of turkeys afterwards is just the worst.
And it's so weird because the original Thanksgiving most likely had lobster as a dish instead of turkeys, because that's what was popular around that area. And I think that would be a much better dinner.
Definitely. I think turkeys, I've noticed that, depending on, when I used to work in Williamsburg, we didn't sell that many turkeys. And it's because there weren't these big families over there. It's just like single people cooking for their single friends, like cool people and stuff. So, you get a roasting chicken or like a turkey breast. But, getting a 28 to 30 pound turkey, that just sounds crazy to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a huge bird. And, unless you're feeding, I don't know how many people you plan on feeding, but my family is not that big,
What is your favorite piece of meat to cook? What's your favorite dish?
Right now, I really like really well marbleized flat meat.
Okay.
It's got to be marbleized. I can't do like this plain old flap. Otherwise, I'm really into the chuck right now.
Okay.
In roasting mood. But I don't really have a particular favorite. I have grown to not like ribeyes anymore. I'm kind of sad about it.
How come?
But I think I'm ribeyed out.
Just because of too much?
It's too much. I just haven't had a good ribeye in a while. I know it sounds weird, right?
Well, I don't know. I had tenderloin for dinner last night, which is like completely out of my norm.
Last time I had tenderloin, I cut it up and ate it as tacos. I know it sounds terrible. I was like, I'm making tacos with tenderloin, living that life.
I made it. I had a steak salad, and I also smoked the tenderloin, which made it a little better.
See, I don't have all that fancy stuff. My house is so small. I actually can't wait to move out of New York City so I can buy equipment, because it's insane here, the amount of space that we're supposed to deal with. So I have to like buy the meat and eat it right away. Otherwise, there's no space for it,
Yeah. I would just store everything at your work.
I can't. I can't. Especially a time like now. But where I work, unfortunately, being that it's corporate, they don't really offer those kinds of things that smaller shops do. I really miss working at smaller shops for that. If there's like too much, this, you get to take one home, but everything's tracked through numbers and things like that. It's pretty whack. But yeah, you can't store stuff at work like how you would a normal butcher shop. Hopefully one day that changes, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. Because it's like, it's a butcher. We're butchers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to be a real, because what we're doing is great. But, if you're going to embrace the whole craft butchery thing, like, I got team members I work with who've never even, like, had bone marrow before, or don't even buy the meat that they sell. Like, I'm trying my hardest to change that, but that weirds me out. I've never seen certain people ever buy a piece of meat from the place that they work. Like, there's such a disconnect. It's just so strange to me.
Where could people find you online? And if you have anything to plug.
So your best bet is to find me on the gram, against.hergrain on Instagram. That's usually where I'm at. Otherwise, that's it. I got a couple things I'd like to plug, but they're kind of in the weights. But if you want to find out, you can follow me on Instagram, definitely. Some little TV bids coming up and things like that.
Thanks for letting me interview you.
Next time. This was really fun. I'm glad it finally happened.
I want to thank Samantha for being on the show. That was great. All of her links and contact information will be in the show notes. If you want to know about Meat Camp or the Butcher's Manifesto, that will be in there as well. This next segment is Ryan, David, and myself having a conversation that we usually do is just crappy banter to get our levels correct. And I usually record it because number one rule in recording is record everything. That's how we get classic phrases like from politicians. Live mics are a blessing. Another thing about this piece is I'm not going to audio treat it. You will hear my son in the background. You will hear clicks. You'll hear other things.
Real windy, one of those kinds of days. Nice.
Cool. I loved your braising piece with the old hens and the recipe. I just played that recipe for my wife last night. I was like,
oh, cool.
We got to try this.
Yeah, man. I mean, thanks. It took me a few tries to get one of those things to be good.
Yeah, so you do a few takes on and then select the best one or something? Select the best one?
Well, it's more like just make it for dinner and then everyone's sorely disappointed and then I try it again and I just disappoint everybody enough times that I eventually get it right.
Okay, yeah.
I guess I could probably not sit right on top of the computer too. That'd probably help with the volume.
It's okay. Were you able to open up Google Docs?
Yeah, I that's working too. I saw some new questions at the bottom.
Yeah, and then I added a bunch of stories that are right above that. Everything there is new.
Okay. I see. Oh, yeah, okay, great. I see.
And we'll get it open on our end. Hold on.
I saw some interesting questions at the end there about motivating young workers.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I like the question about which animal is more similar to a deer, a pig, or a cow.
A sheep.
I was going to say, I wonder if he'll be surprised and excited to know that there's something that's like actually really quite similar.
Yeah. None of those.
Yeah.
What's similar to a deer? A chicken or a sand?
It's actually a sea lion.
Yeah. There we go. All right. I'm just waiting for the noise downstairs to settle down. Harrison wants to hang out.
I'm sure he's got some good stuff to say about these topics.
He's got a few words. Have you heard the word hi?
Now, is that with an I or an IGH? Do you think?
I don't know. We are in Washington.
Time will tell. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't take after his uncle. He smokes the marijuana.
Ooh. Yeah.
I have probably some of the more creepy experiences of my life have happened when I was smoking weed. So I haven't figured out a way to weave that into any of our recordings yet, but
I'm generally really, really high strung, or like have some low level oscillation of anxiety anyways. So that I've had definitely my most paranoid experiences during those times.
Really?
Yeah. That's when I discovered that I get anxiety attacks, was when I was like 14 on marijuana.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You anxiety started hitting you
it was terrible.
Oh, man.
Yeah, like I didn't know. I literally thought I was dying. And then they just continued happening throughout my whole life.
Even when you weren't smoking weed?
Mm-hmm. But then later in my, a few years ago, before I started dating Melissa, when I moved back to California from Vermont, I started smoking recreational marijuana just to give it a shot, and I have insomnia. And I didn't get any anxiety, and it made watching cartoons better and made me appreciate, eating more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like there's this random, it was probably about a 2-week period when I was 30 that I was a cliche just stoner. I would bong it up all the time.
Really? Well, it sounds like it was therapeutic at that time, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Looking back, it's one of those things like, we both have kids, David. You don't have the pleasure of having a child because you can't give birth. But
never bred a woman. You listen to the Meat Eater podcast? Sorry to interrupt you, but they just went on this whole thing about, he's like, well, like us two are the only two that have ever bred a woman in this whole group. I never put it that way. I heard it put that way, but
yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
I have proof that I have sex. He runs around all the time and makes recording difficult. But one day, David, you'll lose your virginity.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, but no, it's one of those things where it's like when they come, like, because when I was growing up, it's like marijuana was held to the same vein as like smoking crack.
Yeah,
that like if you watch those like old Chuck Norris movies and all that, when they're fighting drug cartels, they're killing thousands of people for marijuana in like street gangs and all this stuff. And now that it's like this just chill thing, like what do you tell your kids when they're going to be, when you have some dipshit kid like us who's going to be smoking weed at like 15?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's still very serious here.
Yeah,
especially in the town that I'm in right now. It's like they take it very fucking seriously.
Yeah.
Which I forgot about,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you mean. That was my experience of it growing up. My parents, my mom, my stepdad were like very anti-weed. I used to get into these debates with my stepdad all the time. Just like comparing marijuana to alcohol. Like, as far as, I just always found that like people on weed were generally more interesting or more creative or more into art, than alcohol. So me and him always get into it, and he's just sort of like super black and white. There's a lot of people really black and white about like, weed is never do it, and it's legal and it's horrible, which is what you're saying. That's how you grew up.
Yeah, but right? Like I grew up with that narrative, but my parents also smoked weed in the 70s. So but also pretended like they didn't. Like, so I don't know if like when my son becomes of that age, or is he gonna be like one of those things where I'm like gonna have that hardline strictness, or am I going where I'm gonna pretend like I never smoked weed or sniffed coke or any of that, or am I gonna just be like, yeah, it's all about being careful.
I mean, there's probably going to be some new stuff around by then, like some sort of stuff that, like, you drink it and it turns you into a wild animal for 6 or 8 hours or something. You know, some sort of brand new engineered stuff. You probably have something else to.
Some crazy thing.
Yeah.
Like something to do with the internet and, some new sex thing.
Yeah.
All right, let's start and just ignore the whining in the background.
Yeah, I've got a dog in the background too, so I keep hearing it from outside. So it'll just be call it a field recording.
All right, meatheads. That was our bonus Thanksgiving episode. And like I said, I just wanted to put something out to help relieve you if you're traveling or if you're stuck in the car or something, that to help you get through this holiday season. Or if you're with your family and you just want to get away and listen to Samantha, listen to David, listen to Ryan or myself. And this reminds me when I was in my early 20s, I was a bouncer of a bar, and one of our busiest days for locals, the bar was in Santa Barbara, so a lot of people were transplants or moved out, but people who were originally from there, the day of Thanksgiving or the day after was almost like a reunion for regulars of people who moved away or went to school there, who were back in town, because after the meal or after a day with their families, they were sick of them and they would go out and see their friends. So maybe that's what you're doing. Maybe you want to listen to this to help you get through. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. And of course, if you want to contact us, it's at themeatblockpodcast@gmail.com. Tweet us at themeatblockpod or Instagram at themeatblock. If you want to get a hold of Ryan, he is at Gather and Break on Instagram. David is at A Farm Butcher on Instagram. And I am at American Butcher on Instagram and Facebook. And if you want to help out the show, really, the best thing you could do right now is open up the Apple Podcast app, type in The Meat Block, leave us 5 stars and a comment. That would mean the world to me. All right. Eat, sleep, have fun. Hopefully you have a 4-day weekend. If you don't, consider your vocation. And check out Samantha at Against Her Grain on Instagram. It's actually at against.hergrain on Instagram, and that link will be in the show notes along with a bunch of other stuff we discussed in that interview. Keep all your fingers and all that fun stuff. This is Johnny Cash's Thanksgiving prayer. Talk to you later. And Brett, that's 0. And Brian M, I'm with you, and that's the Meat Block.
Thanksgiving Day for the rest of my life, I'm thanking the Lord He made you.